Welcome everybody. So today I am going to deliver lecture on diarrhea, which is very important topics related to GI tract disorder, and invariably it affects almost all species of animals on the earth, and this is very life-threatening conditions if it will not be treated on time. So we should consider this particular problem of diarrhea very seriously whenever a case comes to us. For this, we need to go for the differential diagnosis and appropriate treatment. And in some cases, and sometimes we need to have some important preventive measures or managemental practices to improve, to lessen the degree of or quantum or cases of diarrhea in organized forms or in even in unorganized farms where some animals is being kept for the production of milks, or some goats or sheep is being reared for the production of meat or mohair or wool. So whatever animal is affected with this particular disorder, we have to take it seriously, otherwise we will lose the very important things or our source of livelihood. So I am not going in detail about the economic consideration of the this particular problem. I am coming to the exact topic, that is the introduction of diarrhea. First of all, I want to emphasize some important points related to the diarrhea. Diarrhea, as you all know, causes not only the death of the animal due to exact defecation, or it also affects the, or it also causes death in animals due to dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, acid base imbalance, and sometimes the hemoconcentration, or which leads to the development of shock, and the cardiopulmonary actions is ceased. So these are the important, and diarrhea invariably results in dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. And you must have learnt about the uh, diarrhea, in which you must have got the information about once the diarrhea occur in animal, it invariably leads to the metabolic acidosis. So these are the things which we will discuss in coming slides or coming part of lecture. So first of all, we should know the definition of diarrhea. What is diarrhea? So diarrhea is a condition in which there is a increase in quantity of feces or increase in frequency of defecation. This is the standard definition of diarrhea. Increase in quantity of feces along with increase in frequency of defecation is called diarrhea. And as you all know, diarrhea is very broad topic because it is of GI tract origin, and GI tract plays various important roles for the living beings. So once the animal is suffering from diarrhea, a lot of problem will arise and animal will suffer a lot. Okay. So now come to the causes of diarrhea. What are the important causes of diarrhea, which is responsible for diarrhea? So we have classified the causes into three categories. First one is on the basis of exact etiology. It has been further sub-classified into two categories, that is infectious in origin and non-infectious in origin. So we are mostly focusing on the infectious origin. We never thought about the non-infectious origin, and there is a lot of cases of diarrhea which is caused by the non-infectious origin. Non-infectious origin diarrhea encompasses or consists of the agents like undigestible food which is of indigestible in nature. If animal consumes, it may lead to the production of diarrhea. Stale food, that means petrified foods. If someone consumes the petrified foods, it may produces diarrhea. Some toxicants, some heavy metals, some toxins, plant feed and forage, which is toxic in nature, is responsible for production of diarrhea. So these are the component comes under the non-infectious causes of diarrhea. And another one is the infectious causes. I think almost all of you must have learned about the infectious causes, but in very brief, I would like to emphasize the infectious causes also. So, first of all, the bacterial causes. So, many bacteria are responsible for the causation of bacteria, especially the Escherichia coli. Enterotoxigenic Escherichia coli, you might have heard the term enterotoxigenic. That means the bacteria which is able to produce the enterotoxin is called enterotoxigenic Escherichia coli, or another bacteria also. Those who are producing the enterotoxin is called enterotoxigenic. So important class of bacteria which are able to produce the enterotoxins are Escherichia coli, Salmonella, Clostridium. These are the bacteria responsible for the production of enterotoxins. Escherichia coli, Salmonella, Vibrio, Mycobacterium paratuberculosis, Proteus, Pseudomonas. These are the important Clostridium bacteria. These are the important bacteria which are responsible for the causing diarrhea in animals, especially young ones. In most of the cases, what we observe, young ones used to suffer more because death in mortality in young ones is more as compared to the adult. So our young ones or stock animals should need to be protected from the diarrhea. So what is the basic characteristic or pathogenicity of Escherichia coli origin diarrhea? Sometimes it is also called as a secretory diarrhea because in infection of Escherichia coli there is a huge quantity of exudate will be secreted into the intestinal lumen, and once the fluid will accumulate in the intestinal lumen, it will increase the turgor pressure or tonicity of GI tract, that particular segment of GI tract, and produces a stimulatory effect to evacuate those areas, and by this way the diarrhea will be produced. Another one is the Clostridium. Clostridium, you might have learned that responsible for the enterotoxemia, especially in sheep and goats. Enterotoxemia produced by the Clostridium. What happens in enterotoxemia? There are so many kinds of enterotoxins produced by the Clostridium which acts upon the cells or mucosa of intestine, and it will produces the hypersecretory effect and diarrhea will be evident. Okay. Another thing is as you all know, the Mycobacterium paratuberculosis is the important one, which also is responsible for production of diarrhea. So many bacteria is responsible. So I am simply enlisting the name of those bacteria, and if we will go in detail, it will take very long time. So I am limiting my explanation to only naming few of them and proceeding towards the another organism. Now come to the viral etiology. As you all know, virus is also responsible for the causation or production of diarrhea in animals, especially young ones and adults as well. So what are those? That important one are rotavirus, coronavirus, IVR, BVD. These are the important viruses which causes the diarrhea in the animal. So rotavirus and coronavirus are well known to everybody because calves, lambs and kids, foals usually used to suffer from this particular viral etiology and produces diarrhea in young ones and having much more mortality as compared to the adult animal. So these are the important virus responsible for the production of diarrhea in the animal. Now protozoan. Protozoa is also important and also responsible for causation of diarrhea. So important one among them are the Cryptosporidium and Coccidia. What is difference between Cryptosporidium and Coccidia? You might have learned, you might have forget also, because as you all know, Coccidia is not so much important in cattle, but sometimes it is also reported from this species of animal. These are the lumen dwelling parasites or protozoa, you can say, but Cryptosporidium is the tissue dwelling. This is the basic difference between these two, and Cryptosporidium causes the severe diarrhea and dysentery in animals, and especially young ones used to suffer more, and it has been reported in calves as well. So these are the important, and another helminthic parasites is also responsible for diarrhea, the Astrategia and Piostome, Physola. So many parasites are responsible that comes under the helminths. Molds sometimes is also used to cause the diarrhea in animal, and some toxicants is also responsible for the production of diarrhea. So these are the infectious component or infectious etiology responsible for the diarrhea. Now diarrhea has been classified on another basis, that is called the pathophysiological basis. This is important one because irrespective of causative agent, this is the modes by which diarrhea is produced, that is called pathophysiology. And on this basis it has been classified into four categories. First one is called osmotic diarrhea. That means there would be change of osmotic gradient inside the gut or lumen of the GI tract. Once there would be change in osmotic gradient, what happens if there will be hyper oncotic conditions in lumen? The fluid from the interstitial or intracellular component will be attracted in the lumen, and it will increase the fluidity of the lumen. And once the fluidity of the lumen will increase, what will happen? It will pose pressure on the mesenteric nerve or nerve supply to those area, and it will initiate the sensation of defecation. So by this way there will be the initiation of sensation of defecation, and frequency of defecation will increase and diarrhea will produce. So this is the way by which the diarrhea, that means osmotic changes, osmotic pressure or gradient changes leads to the development of diarrhea. Another component is secretory, that means hypersecretion. Hypersecretion will start. Both things happens together in the GI tract, secretion as well as absorption. So there is a equilibrium of, in normal condition there would be the equal quantity of absorption as well as secretion of fluids will take place. But if the secretion will exceeds from the absorption, naturally there will be accumulation of more quantity of fluid in the lumen, and it will produce the diarrhea. That is called secretory diarrhea. Another one is the exudative diarrhea. Exudation means there will be the inflammatory exudates. That means if there will be the inflammation of mucosal barrier, mucosal membrane of the GI tract, that will initiate the exudate secretion in the cavity, and it will increase the fluidity of the gastric content or intestinal content. And in the same fashion or same manner there will be the stimulation of nerve, and sensation of defecation will produce, which leads to the development of defecation. or diarrhea. Another condition is the hypermotility. Hypermotility is the another thing. As you all know, there is a movement in GI tract that is called epistaltic movement. So that movement is regular one, but due to a stimulation or due to parasympathomimetic action, there would be there increase in the movement, and it will produces the hypermotility, and it will lessen the time for ingesta to remain in the GI tract, and it will be flushed out or evacuated away from the gastric lumen to outside the environment, and in this way it will again produces the diarrhea. And another way of classification is on the basis of involvement of GI tract. There are usually two component of GI tract is responsible for production of diarrhea. One is the small intestine and another one is the large intestine. So small intestine diarrhea and large intestinal diarrhea. So how can we differentiate between these two? There is very simple method by which we can differentiate whether it is of a small intestinal origin or large intestinal origin diarrhea. So where some of the example I would like to cite here. If there will be the tenesmus, that means it is of large intestinal origin diarrhea. If there will be melena, that means blood comes out with the feces, digested blood. It indicates that the bleeding is happening in upper GI tract or in a small intestine, and blood get digested while passing down to the large intestine, and melena will be reported in a small intestinal origin. Volume of feces. If there will be the large quantity of feces, that means it is of a small intestinal in origin, and in case of large intestinal origin, there would be less volume. And large intestinal diarrhea is usually studded with mucus and fresh blood, that is called hematochezia. And small intestine will be black blood, that is melena. So these are the important aspects and important parameters by which you can differentiate between large intestine or small intestine diarrhea. Another important things is now we have discussed a lot about the different kinds of diarrhea, etiology and pathophysiology. Now come to the treatment, and diagnosis is very much important, and it can be diagnosed very easily. In case of non-infectious diarrhea, sometimes it becomes difficult, but in infectious diarrhea we can very well appreciate, and everyone we can appreciate this is a cause of diarrhea. And for that we need to go for the culture and sensitivity for bacteria and for virus isolation in viral diarrhea. For coccidial or protozoal, we need to go for diagnosis of coccidia or cryptosporidium. By this way, egg and ova, in case of helminth, you can diagnose it very well. Now come to treatment. So treatment consists of several things which we should consider, or clinicians should consider while treating the diarrhea. First of all is the correction of fluid and electrolyte balance. This is very important, paramount importance, because diarrhea invariably leads to the dehydration, electrolyte and acid-base imbalance. So for that we need to incorporate in the treatment of diarrhea. Fluid therapy is the major component or basic component for the treatment of diarrhea. And selection of fluid is also important, because metabolic acidosis will be there. So we need to choose that kind of fluid which supplement, which can neutralize the acidosis as well. So Ringer's solution, Ringer's lactate is very much important in this particular situations, or you may go for the different tonicity of sodium bicarbonate and another things. Okay. Now, control of discomfort. There would be acute abdominal pain. For that we need to give some analgesic or antispasmodic preparation to reduce the discomfort. Now come to Intestinal protectant. Intestinal protectant is very much important, and it is frequently and routinely used in the treatment of diarrhea. And some of the intestinal protectant I would like to cite here. Important one are the most important among them are kaolin and pectin, and another one is charcoal and bismuth subsalicylate. These are the protectant of GI tract, but these protectants have some unwanted effects also, because in case of infectious diarrhea, once we are giving the oral medication or oral antibiotic or antibacterial antimicrobial preparation, these component or protectants will interfere in the absorption of those antibacterial. So these are the disadvantages of this particular protectant. So these things should be considered while treating the infectious diarrhea. So dose is important. As you all know, kaolin is nothing but it is a aluminum silicate, and pectin is nothing but it is a pectin is the citrate fruit, arises from the citrate fruit. Yeah, you can say that the bark of citrate fruit, pectin. So dose rate is not so much important, and 5 to 8 gram is essential, mandatory, required for the small animals, and for large animal it may be given up to 50 gram at a time. Depending upon body weight, you just need to calibrate the dose. And bismuth subsalicylate is also important protectant, but this particular protectant has one major drawback. Once we will use this particular protectant, there will be tarry colored feces will come out, which again produces problem in the farmer's mind. So you need to teach the farmers about this when you are using this preparation. Now come to motility modifier. If there would be the hypermotility, so we need to check the hypermotility. So what are the drugs which is important for checking the hypermotility? So we are usually going for the atropine sulfate, but atropine sulfate has so many side effects, because especially in ruminants where the animal suffering from diarrhea, the GI stasis is already sets in, and once you will use the atropine sulfate, it will further aggravate the situation, and it will further aggravate the situation, and will again prolong the ingesta passage time, and the toxin which will be available will be absorbed if it will remain for longer time in tract, and it will produces the tachycardia, xerostomia, and stasis. These are the important things which makes this particular preparation not useful for anticholinergic agent in the ruminants especially. So for this we have some alternative preparation which are devoid of these side effects, that is propenthalin, aminopeptine, aminopentadine. These are the preparation is available which we can use in place of atropine sulfate. And some opiates preparation is also recommended in severe diarrhea, but again opiates is having similar kind of problem, because it further aggravates the secretory effects of GI tracts. It will again aggravate the secretion in the system. So, and another thing, opiates having much more side effects. So alternative non-opiates drugs which is having similar kinds of action is available, which can be used, that is diphenoxylate or loperamide. The dose rate of diphenoxylate is 0.05 to 0.1 mg per kg body weight, and loperamide you can use at dose rate of 0.08 mg per kg body weight. But again, in infectious cases, these are not recommended, because it will prolong the passage time, and if there will be production of toxins by the bacteria or other organism, it will be absorbed again and causing further problem. So this can be used in case of diarrhea, but in very cautiously. Okay. Now come to anti-inflammatory. Anti-inflammatory is also recommended because the prostaglandin is one of the major factor behind the hypersecretion of or hypersecretory effect. So to check the prostaglandin action, NSAIDs is recommended, and NSAIDs will be useful in case of to reduce the hypersecretion. The NSAIDs is also recommended, and antitoxins is sometimes also recommended, as in case of Clostridium infections, and in case of parvoviral infections, antiserum can be used, or even plasma of the healthy animal is also used to check the diarrhea. Now, managemental aspects is also needs to be taken into consideration, that is nutritional aspects and environmental aspects. So, once the animal give birth to young ones, the young ones should be fed to the adequate quantity of colostrum to develop the adequate immunity to protect themselves from the various microorganism, impeding microorganism. And environmental conditions in and around wire or in cattle shed should be at a level so that the very less or less chances of getting infections of the young ones. Environmental conditions is also. Vaccination is sometimes also recommended but this is not so far adopted in our country in Indian conditions, but in some developed countries, vaccination against some of the important bacteria has been done to reduce the mortality in young ones, or to develop the immunity in the young ones for against the salmonellosis or Escherichia coli and some of the Proteus or Pseudomonas. They are using the vaccine, but we are still lagging behind, far behind. We are not having any kind of vaccines in our Indian conditions, so we need to focus on those areas as well, and by this way we can reduces the mortality in young ones, and our future stocks cannot be compromised. So by these words I am concluding this lecture, and if you want to know something more about this, you can contact directly to me, or go to the textbook and material available, lot of material available on the Google or internet. Thank you.